Hello everybody and welcome to Vape Politics Radio episode 3. This week we will be talking about some legislative stuff going on in Delaware, the VaporShark controversy that sparked earlier this week, some good news from Congress. Yes, that's right, I said it, good news from Congress. I know that's rare, but today we've got some. Also, Greg Connelly will be speaking at a county hearing in Howard County of Maryland, and we will be hearing a little bit from him on our industry as a whole and how we should really be defining vaping when it comes to county legislation. And this really applies to state legislation as well. But that's what we've got lined up for today on Vape Politics Radio. Let's get started. Our first story today is going to be some breaking news coming out of Delaware. Senate lawmakers passed legislation on Thursday that adds e-cigarette devices to Delaware's Clean Indoor Air Act, but would exempt vape shops from such a ban. According to Senator Bethany Hall, it is a good day for public health, and this provides another level of protection for the public. The bill, which passed 13-7 with one not voting, saw several amendments defeated. One of those amendments would have exempted cigar shops from the ban, and another would have exempted tap rooms and taverns, bars and things like that. The measure now heads to the governor of Delaware, who said that he will sign the bill. House lawmakers defeated similar amendments when they passed legislation in early May. The only amendment that did pass was the one that exempts vape shops. Stores where people buy their e-cigarette devices and flavoring. Stores would be exempt if 80% of the revenue came from the sale of e-cigarettes and the shop does not share space with other establishments. Now, there are a couple of problems with this bill. Number one, and I quote, stores would be exempt if 80% of revenue came from the sale of e-cigarettes and the shop does not share space with other establishments, end quote. Okay, so what does this mean? Does this mean that if an e-cig store is in a strip mall that they can't be exempt from this Clean Air Act? Furthermore, isn't the exemption a little bit suspicious the way that it's worded? Let me just read that one more time. If 80% of revenue came from the sale of e-cigarettes, which I mean, that's pretty much all a vape shop sells, unless they're also a Starbucks or something like that. But we all know Starbucks and vaping do not get along. If 80% of revenue came from the sale of e-cigarettes and the shop does not share space with other establishments, they really need to define this a little bit more, because this could mean one of two things. The shop does not share space with other establishments. Does this mean one big store, like you couldn't be in a mall because there are other places right next to it or in the same open air? Or does this mean like a strip mall, just a longer building where the stores are connected, but they don't share the same air? These are a few questions that need to be answered. Number 2, and I quote, e-cigarettes are battery-powered devices that produce an odorless vapor that typically contains nicotine and flavorings. Supporters of the bill say e-cigarettes contain harmful chemicals. Okay, supporters of the bill, where is your science? Please back that up. Harmful chemicals. Yes, nicotine is toxic. We all know this and we all accept this. But we also know that nicotine, when taken away from the thing that really kills us, tar and tobacco, and smoke in general, we're not smoking. Nicotine is in our vapor. Vapor and smoke are different things. Again, with the harmful chemicals, please name 2. I ask of you to name 2. You can include nicotine. I don't care. But name 2 harmful chemicals. Because the science does not back up your words, my friend. This is just yet another example of politicians whose teams are too lazy to do research. And yes, I said teams, because let's be honest here, politicians, if you have any sort of grasp on how politics works, the politicians themselves are not going home, getting on their computers and looking up research for bills. They have aides for that. They have people on their teams for that. So it just makes me mad when we get thrown under this giant blanket of words like harmful chemicals. And I love how this says, supporters of the bill. Who are you? Oh, ye mysterious supporters of the bill. And name 2 harmful chemicals. That's all I'm asking. Name 2 and back it up with research. All right, guys, what do you guys think? What does this mean for Delaware? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I mean, obviously, I think it's a bad thing because the exemption for vape shops is poorly worded and misconstrued, and harmful chemicals is broad and without founding. So what do you guys think? Share with us in the comments below, and we're going to move on to our next segment. All right, my friends, it is time to talk about the giant elephant in the room. Unless you've been living under a rock this week, you know about VaporShark's massive testing that went on. According to VapeAboutIt.com, who wrote a beautiful article on the entire situation, they said this: as many may have heard, the Florida-based VaporShark company released their findings this week after lab testing multiple e-liquid brands that they carry. The news broke on Reddit, quickly spreading across social media. You know how Reddit is. Something pops up, it goes everywhere. I'm a firm believer that the electronic cigarette industry social media movement really started on Reddit. Nick Grimgreen will agree with me there. They continued, we want to make clear that these findings were not done by us. This is Vape About It speaking. We want to make clear that these findings were not done by us, that we know there is controversy around these tests and controversy around the harmful effects of diacetyl and acetylpropanol. We are reporting on tests done by VaporShark, and this test might not reflect the whole truth of the situation, because there is a counter-argument to the testing that VaporShark pushed out, and we'll be talking about that here momentarily. VaporShark is one of the largest chains of specialty vapor shops, primarily based in Florida. VaporShark sells their own branded products online and in-store. They should be commended for being proactive and incurring the cost, not to mention the risk to their reputation by releasing these findings. Diacetyl in particular is a cause for concern, as it is commonly known to vapors as causing the dreaded popcorn lung. Popcorn lung causes irreversible damage to the lungs from inhalation. I'm going to take a moment and pause and just speak on my own behalf. Popcorn lung is a very, very, very rare circumstance that, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but there has not been a case of popcorn lung related to vaping as of now. Moving on. Vape About It continued, what is alarming is some of the brands that tested high for these harmful chemicals are some of the industry's biggest names. And hold on, folks, it's about to get hairy. We're going to name drop some stuff. Some of those big names included Cutwood with both DA and AP and Cosmic Fog with AP. Currently, there have been no announcements or comments made by any of the companies listed that tested high for the above-mentioned chemicals. VaporShark's actions signal an important shift in the industry, as companies are starting to take steps towards self-regulation. This shows a proactive approach by the industry rather than waiting on health officials and the government. We are taking charge of ourselves. And stepping away and then speaking for myself as Vape Politics Radio, this is a growing trend. And of course, this is a different side to this trend, but I think the trend itself is a beautiful one, and that is we're stepping up to the plate, folks. Over the past 5 years, vaping has turned into one of the largest, in my opinion, number one, the fastest moving industries I've ever seen. A good friend of mine, Chris Warlick, he owns a vapor store out here in Georgia called Vapewares, and we were talking many times, but one of the things that he said to me is the vaping industry moves as fast, or if not faster, technology-wise, than the computer industry, which is a bold statement, and he does work in the computer industry, but he's right. This is one of the fastest growing industries, and it's beautiful to see us finally, and I know we've been doing some of this in the past, but it's good to see us finally stepping up to the plate to self-regulate. We saw a really great example of this a couple weeks ago with VapeForYouth.com popping up, creating principles that could be agreed on by multiple manufacturers. The site already has 250 manufacturers, companies, and vaping industry representatives signing up to agree with the set of principles that they put on that site. That's just one example of self-regulating. This new move by VaporShark to test every e-liquid that they carry as a distributor, that's another move. I'm excited to see what this is going to do. In a moment, we'll be discussing one of the counter arguments for this from Cyclops Vapor and their controversial juice that is being talked about right now, Colossus. Now, Cyclops Vapor had this to say on their Facebook. We are aware that there is some public concern being raised among customers around the alleged diacetyl and AP content of e-liquids due to lab reports released by VaporShark. Some of our retail partners as well as our fans have questioned the safety of our Colossus e-liquid as a result of those lab results. The health and safety of our customers is always considered first in everything we do. That's why we only work with long-standing and trusted flavor manufacturers. We operate in a Class 7 clean room, and each member of our staff, from our chemist to our production team, work under very strict clean room protocol. Please see our public response by following the link below regarding the reports released from VaporShark. And I'll read an excerpt from that discussing Colossus. This is what they said. The products tested included each flavor from Cyclops Vapor, with emphasis being placed on Colossus, our vanilla custard, for the allegedly elevated levels of diacetyl and AP listed in its lab report. The lab results obtained by VaporShark show a vast discrepancy in the amount of AP when compared to our own third-party analysis. We believe the numbers listed in the report supplied by VaporShark are not accurate and are a poor indicator of the AP content of our e-liquid. Because of these discrepancies, our chemists will be sending out another round of our full line to be tested at the original lab, as well as another third-party lab to back up our original findings and eliminate any concern over use of the product. We are by no means opposed to VaporShark posting lab results. We only wish to ensure that the data being shared with the public is true and accurate. Now, this raises a question. Not a question of, who was right, who was wrong, but a question of standards. Where do we draw the line? Because VaporShark drew it at a very specific point. If you go and look at the VaporShark website and you look at their lab results, they had markers for when things became green level, yellow level, red level for diacetyl and AP. And you can look at all that on the e-liquid worksheets that they have up there. So the question is, where is the safety line drawn? I think that's something that we have to ask ourselves as an industry. If we are going to self-regulate, these are things we have to figure out and worry about. Now, as always, I do want to hear what you guys have to say. So post up in the comments below, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, or our blog at vapepolitics.com. Where do you guys think the line should be drawn? Should other e-liquid distributors start testing all of their liquid? And if so, do we have a right to that information? I think we do. And I'm interested to see how this pans out over the coming weeks. We'll have more on the story next week. You know, working in advocacy, especially in vaping, can be kind of depressing, I'm not going to lie to you. Every day you're seeing either Kaiser Permanente pushing out propaganda or Washington banning the sale of e-cigarettes and pushing a tax to 95%. But some days like today, there are good days. Good news, beautiful, wonderful news, things that make you want to jump for joy. And I'll tell you what, folks, the following makes me want to jump for joy. I'm excited, and Greg Connelly's excited. And when Greg Connelly gets excited, it's reason to be paying attention. This comes from the Florida Smoke-Free Association. According to them, this came from an email from the AVA, also known as the American Vaping Association, of which Greg Connelly is the president. Now, for those of you who don't know Greg Connelly, he's a former lawyer who is now a vaping advocate. He goes to county hearings. We're actually going to be doing a segment here in about 5 to 10 minutes of him presenting e-cigarettes in a county hearing, and I think it's one of the best explanations for our industry that I've ever heard, so I want to share that with you. But first, some good news from the Florida Smoke-Free Association. According to them, today the American Vaping Association, a leading advocate for the benefits of vapor products such as electronic cigarettes, praised the House Appropriations Subcommittee in Washington, D.C., Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration, and related agencies for its approval of a spending bill that would prevent the FDA from regulating the vast majority of vapor products out of existence. Now, for the past 3 to 5 years, really, we've been hearing, the FDA is coming. Oh, the FDA is coming. Everyone hide. But the truth is, what we've been seeing over the past year is that what the FDA was going to propose would have decimated small business, destroyed the small business aspect of the vapor industry, requiring pre-market run-throughs of almost every single product that is available today, costing companies, small business, mom and pop shops, millions of dollars to go through all of the clarifications and required forms and approvals. Now, the money that they would have to spend does not guarantee them approval. It just guarantees that their products get looked at, and that could take years. Now, we're talking millions of dollars in years. The following is good news on that front. If enacted, this bill would make clear that the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products cannot require vapor products already on the market to go through a lengthy and potentially multi-million-dollar pre-market tobacco review. This bill would not impact the FDA's ability to regulate these products, including setting rigorous product and manufacturing standards. However, what this does for us is it allows for the vapor products of today to continue existing. There won't be, if this goes through, we won't have to send every vapor product that we've had since 2008 to the FDA to get the okay for it. However, when they do produce their regulations, everything will fall under that. But what this protects us from is lengthy and potentially multi-million-dollar review processes for tons and tons of products that we're already accustomed to. Continuing, since the FDA regulation was proposed last April, industry and public health advocates have warned that the FDA's insistence on retroactively applying the pre-market tobacco review requirements to already existing products would lead to over 99% of vapor products being banned. This would happen for no reason other than the inability of nearly all product manufacturers, other than those associated with large tobacco companies, to bear the associated costs. It would crush small business. It would decimate it. It would take it off the playing field completely. I mean, think about your favorite e-cig store or your favorite juice line. Do they have millions and millions of dollars and years of time within this industry to get all of their products pre-approved? Now, I know you're going to throw out some names like, oh, Mount Baker's got the money. They got the cash to throw. Yeah, but does Cyclops, who we talked about a little while ago in the VaporShark, does Cutwood? You got to remember, these people are mainstream to us. They're big to us. But in the realm of the tobacco industry, which is what the FDA kind of looks at us as, we are small fish, my friend, and this would destroy 99% of that. In November, House leadership signaled that Congress could act on the issue if the FDA failed to do so. Speaker Representative John Boehner, Majority Leader Rep. Kevin McCarthy, and House Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman Representative Fred Upton sent a joint letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services requesting that this change be implemented in the regulation. Now, Gregory Connelly, the president of the American Vaping Association, issued the following statement, and I quote, "Without action by Congress, the FDA's proposed regulations threaten to ban 99% plus of vapor products currently available on the market. This would be a disaster not only for thousands of small businesses, but also public health." He goes on to say, "This proposal does not remove the FDA's ability to regulate vapor products. The FDA will retain the authority to immediately move forward with science-based product standards, disclosure requirements, and many other measures. Anyone who claims that this bill would somehow render the FDA toothless is either not familiar with the law or not being forthright. We are thrilled to see movement on this issue. Clear evidence is emerging from around the world that vapor products are helping smokers quit." End quote. I thought that was a great piece of news. We'll be hearing more from Greg Connelly here in a little bit when we play that clip from the county hearing. Now, what do you guys think? I want to hear what you have to say. In my opinion, this is very exciting. This is great news, and I'm super pumped to see where this takes us. All right, my friends, we're going to move into our final segment for this week, and that is going to be a county hearing in Howard County of Maryland. And Greg Connelly, the president of the AVA, speaking on the electronic cigarette industry when a piece of legislation was brought before the county council to be voted upon that had to do with banning electronic cigarette use in public places. Now, in my opinion, this is not a bad ordinance if it's worded correctly. The issue that we're facing here with this specific piece of legislation is that it throws vaping under the bus with smoking. Now, I agree that there should be no vaping allowed in public buildings, and I also agree that there should not be any vaping in things like city-owned parks or anywhere where children are actively present, especially schools, but thankfully most states have figured out a way to eliminate vaping in K through 12 areas. Now, what Greg is going to be talking about is specifically the differences between vaping and smoking and why this specific county council should really look into vaping more before voting on such legislation, and we'll hear that right now.
Distinguished members of the Howard County Council, my name is Gregory Connelly, and I am here today on behalf of a nonprofit called the American Vaping Association, a nonprofit that advocates for small and medium-sized businesses in the vapor product and electronic cigarette markets. We have received no funding from any big tobacco or pharmaceutical companies. In August, I will be celebrating two important milestones. First, it will have been 5 years since I quit smoking with a vapor product after years of trying to quit with products like the patch, gum, and lozenge, which have around a 95 to 97% failure rate. And second, I will be celebrating 5 years of being an advocate for these tobacco-free, smoke-free, and often nicotine-free products, the first 3 years of which I spent as the volunteer legislative director for the U.S.'s largest consumer group, representing users of vapor products. And I'd like to urge you to make a science-based decision on this bill or ordinance and vote no on redefining smoking to include the use of a smoke-free vapor product. When I quit, I was shocked to see that opponents of vapor products were those that were calling themselves anti-smoking advocates. From 2009 to 2011, some of the groups represented here tonight went to state legislatures and actually tried to ban the sale of vapor products to adults while leaving cigarettes, the most deadly form of tobacco, available freely on the market. And now they've wisely switched their tone, but they still are attempting to deceitfully redefine smoking in city and state ordinances to include the use of a smoke-free product. I quickly began intensely studying the issue and came to the conclusion that many were subscribing to a misguided notion that essentially boils down to quit or die. But there's a third option, the use of low-risk nicotine products that do not pose any verifiable risks to bystanders. The AVA is in agreement with many in the public health field that vapor products represent our best hope yet to get millions of American smokers to quit inhaling burning smoke into their lungs. Indeed, population surveys have revealed that approximately 3 to 4 million Americans no longer regularly smoke because of vapor products. Indeed, in the UK, the country's largest anti-smoking group, Action on Smoking and Health, they not only support vapor products, they strongly oppose regulations like the one proposed today to treat vapor products the same as smoking. And heck, even in the UK as well, many NHS cessation services are actually actively offering support to vapor product users, smokers looking to quit with these products, rather than lying and fear-mongering to them about them. A favorite tactic of vapor product detractors that you'll probably hear plenty of tonight is to simply reference scary-sounding chemicals that have been detected in e-cigarette vapor. Critically, they fail to note that the actual levels of these chemicals found in exhaled vapor are far below those levels required to cause harm. They ignore the central tenet of toxicology for over 500 years. The dose makes the poison. Critically, no study has ever found in exhaled vapor any level of a chemical that the daily dose would be above what is permitted to be go out of something like the FDA-approved Nicorette inhaler for smoking cessation. Let's be clear, vapor product advocates like myself are not arguing for the unfettered right to use vapor products wherever we wish. We merely say that because there is no evidence that these products pose harm to bystanders, that businesses should be allowed to make up their own mind. Baltimore, I would have preferred Baltimore eliminated their vaping ordinance as a whole, but at the very least, they set up a system whereby bars and restaurants are allowed to permit vaping when they wish if they simply put signs in their window. That would be a much better solution to this issue than simply deceitfully redefining the word smoking to include the use of a product that creates no smoke. In conclusion, there's no reason to restrict the usage of vapor products, and there are a multitude of reasons not to. Please do not deceitfully redefine smoking to include the use of these smoke-free products. And please take a more reasonable approach. Vapor products are creating ex-smokers every day in Maryland, and this council should take no action that would serve to actively discourage smokers from switching. And as someone earlier mentioned, I strongly encourage independent analysis, tough questions, and Mr. Fox, feel free, any of the council members, to badger me with those questions.
Well, there you have it, folks. Greg Connelly, the president of the American Vaping Association, laying down the truth. I think it's wonderful to see people fighting the good fight to protect our rights as vapers. There's a wonderful saying that goes a little like this: if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that really applies to us here in the vaping industry, because if we do not stand up, if we do not fight, there won't be anything to fight for. I would like to personally thank Greg Connelly for taking the time to attend hearings like this and really push for our rights and to get good information into the hands of legislators, whether that be on Capitol Hill or Howard County. Well, guys, that's going to be it for us here at Vape Politics Radio. Thank you all for joining us for episode 3, and we will see you guys next week.